Okay, so we finished our second part of the Frog Prince, and we're going to do a color coding activity where we identify the speaker in different parts of the story. And the speaker is going to be either the narrator, remember, someone else telling the story, not a character in the story, the princess, or the frog. And of course, the princess and frog are two of our characters. Now, remember, clues that tell us a narrator is speaking are words like she, he, and they. And then clues that let us know if a character is talking are words like I, me, and my. And then also quotation marks are our clues that characters are talking. So let's go ahead and do our color coding. You'll need 3 colors for this activity: green, orange, and yellow. You can use highlighters or you can use regular markers. Even colored pencils or crayons will work just fine. Okay, so let's begin. Unwillingly, the princess allowed the frog into the magnificent palace. He bounced up and down. I see a clue word. I'm going to go ahead and circle it. He bounced up and down, as frogs will do when they are very happy. But she only glared at him. She thought to herself. Now I'm going to stop there because then I see some quotation marks. So, who is saying the very first part of this paragraph? That's right, it's the narrator. It's someone telling us the story, but it's not a character in the story talking. So I'm going to highlight that part green. I also had some clue words like he, she, and they that let us know somebody is talking about somebody else. It's not a character talking about themselves. But then I have a clue right here. I'm going to circle these quotation marks. She thought to herself, "Why should I have to keep my promise to this old croaker just because he fetched my ball out of the well?" So, there's another quotation mark right here. So I know that the character has stopped speaking. That's the end quotation mark. So what character is speaking here? That's right, it's the princess. And we know because it says, she thought to herself. Her father insisted, however, that she should be his friend just as she said she would. So I see a few more of those clue words. She, her father. So who's saying that part of the story? That's right, it's the narrator again telling us about the characters. So I'm going to highlight it green. The frog hopped after her into the great dining hall, boing, boing, and immediately jumped onto the table. So who's saying this part? That's right, it's still the narrator. Now it says the frog hopped after her, but that doesn't mean the frog is speaking. It's the narrator telling us about the frog. There's no character speaking in that part of the story. Let's go to the next part. I see some more clues. Some quotation marks, which let us know a character is going to be speaking. "So, princess," he said, "we shall be the best of friends now." And I see another quotation mark, so that means someone stops talking. So who's saying this part? That's right, this is the frog, because he's talking to the princess. "So, princess," he said, "we shall be the best of friends now." Now lift that little part in the middle because the narrator is saying that part. The narrator is telling me who is talking. The narrator is telling me he said it. So I'm actually going to highlight just that little part green. With a contented croak, he began to eat from her shining gold plate and sparkling silver bowl. Frogs do not eat very neatly, I'm afraid. And the princess, noticing how he smeared the food all over his face, turned away in disgust. She refused to look at the frog or speak to him, but she still felt sick just thinking of such an ugly creature eating with her. Now I see lots of different clue words. He, his face, she, and her. So who's talking in this part? That's right, it's the narrator, because a narrator will use those words to talk about other people. If it was a character talking, the character wouldn't say, he began to eat from all her shining gold plates and sparkling silver bowl. If the character was talking, the frog would say, I ate from her shining gold plate and sparkling silver bowl. But it doesn't say I or me or we, so I know that it's the narrator. What a lovely golden plate, the frog remarked. It reminds me of your ball. You have such beautiful possessions, princess. It must be nice to be a princess and have everything you want. Now, I notice a couple things. I see some quotation marks right here. So this means a character is speaking this part. And then they start again to show me a character continues to speak. So what character is saying these things? That's right, it's the frog, and he is speaking to the princess. So, oops, that's the wrong color. Now, again, I left just this little part right here because that's the narrator telling me who is speaking that part. I can still figure it out based on what he's saying because I know that the frog is saying these things to the princess. It's not the princess talking, but the narrator will still put those in there to help me. Again, I see quotation marks. If I have everything I wanted, the princess retorted, you would not be eating with me. So who is saying this part? That's right, it's the princess. And we have a couple clue words, I, me. So we know that somebody is talking about themselves. And it's the princess. Again, I left this little part here for the narrator. The narrator is telling me the princess is the one saying that. The frog ignored her rudeness. May I have a drink from your cup? He asked politely. The princess was about to refuse, but her father caught her eye, and so she nodded. The frog drank thirstily. Perhaps it was because of that long hop from the well to the palace doors. Would you like to drink now, princess? He asked, nudging the cup back in her direction. So, I want you to pause it, and I want you to go ahead and color code this by yourself, and then unpause it and look at my color codes to make sure you got all of your speakers correct. So go ahead and pause. Okay, so I finished my coats. The very first part is the narrator telling me that the frog ignored her rudeness. And then a character starts speaking because I have a quotation mark. May I have a drink from your cup? He asked politely. So I know that this is the frog speaking. And then the narrator continues. He asked politely. The princess was about to refuse, but her father caught her eye, and so she nodded. The frog drank thirstily. Perhaps it was because of that long hop from the well to the palace doors. And then a character speaks again. Would you like to drink now, princess? So who is speaking here? That's right, it's the frog. It says princess because he is speaking to her, so he says her name. And then the narrator ends it. He asked, nudging the cup back in her direction. So if you look, who speaks in the majority of the story? That means who talks or speaks for most of the story? That's right, the narrator tells most of the story, and that's common in most stories. Most stories, the narrator will tell you most of the story and then include little pieces of dialogue between the characters, just like this one.